Good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to the Alliance Blog podcast, a presentation of alliance-wrestling.com, your number one source for news and information for the National Wrestling Alliance and the United Wrestling Network. My name is Jay Cal. And of course, in this podcast, we like to highlight the voices of the independent wrestling scene, but I would never be too shy to speak to luminaries of the professional wrestling industry. And of course, my guest today has a voice that has echoed all across the world in arenas big and small for wrestling promotions, large and small, working for the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, working for the AWA, working for the NWA, working for WCW. And Garry Michael Cappetta is my guest that is joining us this evening. And I'm super excited to speak to Garry because, he has a lot of stories that I think would be very fun for us to hear. And I think there's a lot of great behind the scenes. I think a lot of times when people talk about pro wrestling, we think of the top tier. We think of like the WWE. We think of currently AEW, and you have been able to work in many of these capacities over the years for different wrestling promotions. And I have to ask you first and foremost, how validated is it for you to look back at your career, starting almost over 50 years ago when you started with the Worldwide Wrestling Federation and being able to call some of the greatest names in wrestling, and then look back and now 50 years later and see the work that you have done for the industry?
Well, of course, it's very rewarding. First off, thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, it's rewarding to. It was one of the things that catapulted me writing my Body Slams book, because when I came off the road for the last time, I was on the road for like 200 nights a
Wow.
year,
Yeah.
and it's a difficult transition, and I loved it. I loved being on the road. I loved every I really enjoyed what I was doing, but it was a transition. It was like a therapeutic exercise just to start writing down some of my memories. um, and it's when you do that and you reflect back over, at that point it was 21 years. um, it's like, wow, did I do all of that? Is it possible, that I announced in 7 countries, and hundreds of cities and tens of thousands of wrestlers? And is it possible? Because as you're doing it day by day, and every event that you go to the ring for, you're not always 100%, but you're doing it the best that you can for that night. And you realize that folks are either buying a ticket to be there or tuning in, and they're taking their time, they're taking their money, they want to be entertained, they want to enjoy themselves. And so you have a responsibility to give it your 100%. But your 100% on Monday may not be your 100% on Thursday. And it's the same with any entertainer. You do your best night by night. Short answer, it was very rewarding.
So that begs a question because I mean, when you think about the job of a ring announcer, I mean, it's very specific to, for wrestling, it's a very specific job, but it's a job that could be, similar to like baseball with like a PA. Same thing with other sports like basketball and hockey. And there's always the PA that's present, that's similar to the ring announcer for pro wrestling. When you were becoming this voice that is synonymous with my childhood, is that what was the goal, always professional wrestling, or were you looking to just be that PA person, that voice for any kind of sporting event?
Well, way back when I began, I was only 21 years old,
Oh, okay.
and um, I wasn't looking to do anything in wrestling. I didn't pursue an announcing career.
Okay.
I was present one night at the matches. They didn't have an announcer. I volunteered just because the show was going so slow, and so for that night, I sat at they had a ringside table.
Sure.
bell, the timekeeper and so forth. And the promoter, I guess, liked what he heard and invited me back every week after that for the rest of that summer. So this was like 4th of July weekend, and then every Saturday night. Um, so I didn't really pursue it at all. I didn't know that I had a voice that was an announcer's voice. You know, I had my favorites, my favorite announcers, back then at the time. And like anyone, whether you're just to say to keep it within the boundaries of the sport, whether you're a wrestler or you're an announcer or you're a referee, there are always those that came before you that you liked
Very much so.
for one reason or another. And so I think the idea is to take in the beginning to take the qualities, if you can examine that as to why you like them, and you take the qualities and you incorporate them into what you're doing, with time you become your own person, but everybody models themselves after who came before them. And then you just create your own voice or your own persona. The persona is more important than the voice.
I agree with you actually on that one. Not that that's surprising. That's a very that sounds very reasonable. Like you have to have that persona. What other kind of tips and tricks could you give to a listener right now who is thinking of pursuing becoming a ring announcer? Like what would be the best way to get started?
The most important thing is to get out and do it as often as you can. Take a look at what you're doing, decide what you like about what you're doing and what you want to change. Just repetition, like to do it, to get out, and from that point of view. Then, as far as your announcements go, if you have a platform, like I had a national platform, and when you're on weekly TV, what you do is modeled by the independent announcers, wrestler wise, by the independent wrestlers.
Yeah.
So I take it as a pretty big responsibility. And sometimes when I watch some of the TV today, I cringe because I'm saying, no, like that's not right. And millions of people will be watching this and think that it is right.
Yeah.
And then it'll take like 10 years to flush that out of the system.
No, that
Um,
that makes a lot of sense because whether it be an announcer or even a wrestler, they we tend to emulate what we see, and so somebody who's coming up and says, "Hey, that looks like that's what I would like to do," and if they're picking up on someone's bad habits or just not executing to the best to the ability, that would carry through. So that when they're making their mark in the world and they're doing the territories or the independents and making up to that next level, they would still be kind of still emulating the person that they grew up watching.
right. Like you'll sit there and you'll say, no, that doesn't make sense. Like if as far as like what a wrestler does
Yeah.
or what a referee doesn't do, because referees have pretty much been neutered. They don't have any authority,
Yeah.
and when that happens, that takes away conflict. And if you have less conflict, then there's less interest. I mean, if wrestlers are allowed to do whatever they want to do whenever they want to do it, then there's no story there. Like, and not only should a match have a story to it, but an event should have a story to it that builds to the main event.
Absolutely.
Which I understand why they do it, but which is why, like when I look at a WWE premium live event, and they start with one of their featured matches because they're the women's version.
Yeah.
Well, by the time you get to the end of the night to the men's version, there all of the mystery, the intrigue, about, what could happen. A lot of that is gone because I just saw it 2 hours ago,
Right.
3 hours ago. So we're not building to that.
Getting back to the art of being a ring announcer, because again, you've had a lot of time not only as an active participant but also as somebody who's been an observer. What makes a great ring announcer versus a good ring announcer?
Um, hmm. There's through the years there are different circumstances that I was confronted with. Um, it's not just saying a name, a weight, and a place.
Mhm.
There have always been important things to communicate to your audience, whether it be the like the rules of a special event, whether it be that the main event, like if it's a live house show, like the main event is not going to be there, and to tell the people that, how you do that, how you tell them what they're going to see instead. Um, there's an importance to that. Um, I did more than ring announcing. I did some commentary in Spanish.
Oh,
I produced some interview segments when I was with WCW. I did the 900 number. They had a channel
yeah,
for On the Road with GMC.
909, 9900. I remember it well.
Yeah. But so how you um, how you how you appear. Now everything evolves, and in today's wrestling world, it's okay. Uh, Whatever's okay and not okay, it all depends upon what the bosses want.
Right.
Okay, so it's okay to draw attention to yourself. It's okay to wear a spangled jacket. It's okay to wear a slinky gown. When I came through, my intention was to do the opposite. My intention was to look like an everyman. And I think one of the reasons they liked me in the beginning is because I'm as short as I am. And back then, if you were not a big guy, for the most part, you you weren't a wrestler.
Yeah.
You had your exceptions, but so therefore, looking ordinary and being smaller, I made everyone else look bigger and crazier.
Yeah.
So now, if I'm a normal everyday guy and there's craziness going on around me as I stand in the middle of the ring, I need to react to that. If I don't react to that, why should it be believable to the people that are watching, to the people in the second, third row, and up in the balcony? Um, so, where you announce makes a difference. If you're in a small venue, it's different from if you're in a 20,000 seater. If you're in a 20,000 seater, you have to be more broad with your motions and with what you do. Um, so like there are a lot of little things that you pick up as you go along. Um, so my point is I didn't have the best voice. It's not about it's not just about the voice. I think what people identified with my voice is there's sincerity there. I'm always have been and always will be a fan, and I think that as professional as I was, that came through. Um, yeah, I mean, on the on the on the other side, I could tell the audience just about anything, and they would believe me. They identified with me. And to a promoter, that should be important. That should, if I'm telling you that the main event is not going to be there that night because the wrestler missed his connection, his flight connection, when really he's back in the hotel room and he can't move.
Yeah.
You know, that's an important thing. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure what your original question was, but
What's the difference between a good announcer and a great announcer? But I think you kind of laid it out there. I think you know, I like to think that authenticity. You said having people relate to you, but I also like to think of it as authenticity. I think when people are you are absolutely 100% displaying an image. You are, again, the voice of the wrestling promotion. When you call the wrestler's name, you are that person. If you're giving information to the audience, again, you are the company, you are the promotion that you're working for. But also being authentic and being yourself, I feel like also adds to, and this is just my opinion, I feel like it adds value to in every role. So whether you're a one of the wrestlers in the ring, or the referees, one of the commentators, or the even the guy who just grabs the jackets at ringside. I mean, I feel like everybody has that role, and when you can authentically be yourself, I feel like people connect with you more frequently. At least that's my opinion.
yeah, and to be a little cynical, to portray authenticity, it's is another possibility.
Sure.
Because early in my years, George the Animal Steel would chase me. I would never stand there, and he would never try to catch me,
Right.
but he looked like he was trying to catch me. So I
I
would never just stand there. Or when Jimmy Snuka would tear the carnation boutonniere off and chew it and spit it in my face, I'm not going to sit there and smile.
right.
I'm not going
Right.
to stand there and think this is a chuckle. Um, so if all of a sudden, before you make your announcements, they get into it, you don't just walk over to the ropes and get out like you usually would. You
Right.
fly out.
Exactly.
You don't want to be injured, and that's true. I mean, you can get injured if you get in the way,
Absolutely.
but you have to add a little more, like flourish of, so that I wouldn't go, if I had to bail out of the ring under those circumstances, I wouldn't use the steps. I'm going to jump. I'm going to jump, and a lot of times I would hit the railing, and that it adds to a flourish.
You sure? Did
And
you
I'm a supporting player, and I'm trying to support what the stars are doing.
while diving out of the ring to try to remove yourself from the confrontation happening, did you ever in real life injure yourself? Like, did you ever break a bone or twist an ankle getting out of that ring?
Yeah, I knocked out one night.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Was it like pretty severe, or was it like, were you okay, or did you have to get treated at the hospital, or?
No, I didn't have to get treated at the hospital, but I didn't. And I probably could have finished the show, but I didn't finish the show. They threw someone else in. This was at the Philadelphia Spectrum. Iron Mike Sharp lost the match on some kind of technicality. He didn't like it. He used to wear a black armband
Yeah.
that, like, if you got hit with it, to a wrestler, that would be devastating.
Right.
And he came after me, and actually, what knocked me out wasn't that he connected and he hit. I was trying to get away from him, and when I jumped out, my head hit the railing,
Oh no.
so that knocked me out. So yeah, I mean, it's there was one night, and this was a weekly televised show. Jimmy Snuka came after me, and he decided, I don't know whether he wanted just my belt or my pants. So he tried to, like, disrobe me. And as I'm getting away from him, my leg goes between the bottom two ropes and grabs. And I wind up hanging upside down from the ring as the show goes off the air, because he was the last match of the hour.
Well,
So there are things like that happen.
nothing too serious, I'm hoping.
No, not serious at all for that one.
Well, that's good. That's good. Um, those moments of levity. I mean, not getting knocked out, obviously, but with, being chased by George the Animal Steel, or having Jimmy Snuka try to rip off your pants. I mean, these kind of moments in the ring are usually unpredictable, and it could be very chaotic, but also add a lot of levity to the show. Was there anybody that you can recall that took away the levity, like was all serious, and you didn't really want to interact with them because that they were just focused on the match, and it wouldn't allow for such shenanigans?
Oh, I would never. I would never encourage it. I would never. I was always reacting.
Got it.
It's nothing that I would ever begin. I've that. No, 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 no.
So you weren't in on it. You just were reacting as it was happening.
That's right. And I wouldn't want to know in advance.
Okay. Was there, I was telling somebody that you were going to come onto the podcast, and they said, I used to love the way that Garry Michael Cappetta would announce the Great Muda. And they said, like, because the way that you emphasized it, it always stayed with them. They're a big Great Muda fan. And I'm wondering, was there any wrestler that you particularly enjoyed announcing, like calling out their name in the audience? Was there any particular wrestler that was more fun to announce than the others?
Not really. But going back to a previous question,
yeah,
about a tip for a ring announcer.
Yes.
Once, when someone would come into the promotion, it may take a few times, but once I found an intro that worked, they did it the same way each and every time. I don't remember that full introduction, but it was the Pearl of the Orient, from the land of the rising sun, maybe.
Yeah.
But it would never be just the Steiner brothers or Rick and Scott. It's Rick Steiner, Scott Steiner, that's Steiner brothers. It was always, this is Sting. It was always the same. So, I mean, and that's a little bit of a trick, you might say.
Yeah.
First off, people are comfortable with what they're used to. And like your friend said, when it's possible that when he sees a picture of Muda, he hears my voice. If it's the exact same introduction each and every time, now my voice becomes identified with a superstar. So it's a very subtle way of having some kind of influence.
Yeah, but it makes a lot of sense the way that you're describing it, because again, first of all, to have that hallmark call for each, not every wrestler gets that hallmark call, but when you hit that home run, sorry for the sports analogies, when somebody loves the way that you say it, or you get a great reaction from the crowd, and that becomes synonymous with that character, it ties everything together even better. And again, when we go to a wrestling show, we're not, it's not just about the actual wrestling. You're going for an escape, for entertainment, for value, for, getting out of the house, and to have everything kind of come together in that way, I think is, I tell people all the time that I don't look at wrestling as much as a sport as I do an art. It's an art form to me. And when I'm watching wrestling, I love to see the different elements of it. And again, the way that you would call the Great Muda, or this is Sting. And when you said that, I hadn't really thought about that in a while, but the way that you said that, just as soon as you said that, I got all those pictures in my head, and all those memories of watching Sting and the Horsemen, and Sting fighting, Ric Flair back in the day, and having those battles. And this is Sting. Wow. It's very powerful, because I hadn't thought about that in probably 30 years. And the way you said it just re-triggered a lot of memories for me. And I guess that just shows how powerful of a technique that is.
Yeah. And this probably will get me into crosshairs with some people, but if I love going to independent wrestling shows. If I was a promoter, probably there would be a significant number of wrestlers who wouldn't work for me.
Sure.
Because just as an example, I was thinking, through all of the years and the tens of thousands of wrestlers that I introduced, no one that I can recall ever came up to me and said, "This is how I want you to introduce me." Now, I would, when they would first come into the promotion, I would go up to them and ask them, what would you want? Or is there anything special that you would want?
Yeah.
Because once again, I wanted to get it down and I wanted it to be consistent. I think that so that if a wrestler told me one thing and then he came in 4 weeks later and said, "I want to change my introduction." Like if I was the promoter, I think wrestlers sometimes have too much say in their character. I think they have to understand that they're a part of a team. I think they have to understand, for instance, and at least this is when I say they have to understand, this is just according to how I look at it. Okay.
Sure.
It's just one person's old school perspective. Maybe it's old school. I don't know why. But the first match should stay in the ring. Like there's this idea that every wrestler on the card has to outdo the next one. And sometimes that's not your role. Sometimes your role is to get people comfortable with a wrestling show.
Yeah.
So, no, you're not going to be the superstar tonight. You're not going to fly through whatever. You're not going to do this move because I'm reserving this for my champion. He's the only one that will do this, whatever it is.
Right. Right.
I would want more say in what everybody does, and then within those bounds, go for it. Then evolve, then, stand out, then do your excellent mat wrestling, do your excellent flying, because, to maintain your character.
Yeah.
But for tonight, this, and this, no, I don't want you to do that. We're a team here, and the show should build. Think about going to a concert, and the performers for the night have this one song that topped the charts for 26 weeks. They're not going to come out and do that first.
No, you're right.
They're going to build to it.
Absolutely.
They'll throw maybe the first song will be, a moderate hit, something that the people can identify with. And then they'll go, especially if they don't have like a huge catalog, of dozens of hits.
Yeah.
And, and then they'll come back and they'll do a few things that they like. Then they'll hit another one that, yes, and the people are on their feet for it. And it's not until the very end that you hear, that song that everybody knows, that everybody listened to, back in the 90s or the 2000s or the 50s or whenever it was.
Right.
So there's a way to build a show. There's a way. You don't go to a play and have all of the drama up front.
Right.
It builds. And then people can anticipate what might happen next. And it's actually making the wrestlers who were featuring that night, it makes their job easier. Because even though by the time we get to that main event, I want them to go balls to the wall, that's going to seem even greater because earlier in the night, things were toned down a little bit.
I agree with you 100%. And I've been to the wrestling shows where, it feels like everybody's trying to outdo the last match or trying to steal the show as it would be. And it's entertaining in that match, but then now the whole build of the card feels different. And by the time you get to the main event, what do they have to do to impress the crowd, how do they get that reaction? And it's like, well, you did all the cool stuff, you did all the great moves, you did all the great moments, and now we have to take it up another level, which could potentially lead to someone being injured. And you're right, it doesn't have to be like that. And I don't know where the notion where things went awry in wrestling, where everyone feels like they need to be in that spotlight, because like you said, it's a team environment. This it is a performance. It is as such, like, the main focus should be the main event. It should be that ultimate climax at the end of the evening, where everyone understands that this is the main event, and that's the match that's supposed to send the fans home either happy or so angry that they're going to come back and buy another ticket. It's got to make sense. And if you have that match in the first match, it just messes up the pace for the rest of the show. I agree
And
with
I
you.
can I can offer you a reason as to why it's evolved that way. It's because people who didn't know what they're doing started promoting shows.
Yeah.
So all they did was book wrestlers and send them out to the ring without having any idea as to how to create a show, how to have a show build. So and so if you give if you give a wrestler carte blanche and you tell him you go out and you do whatever you do the best way that you can, he's going to do that. And he probably, he may be in the first match. It's because there's nobody up top who knows any better who's directing things.
That's a very interesting way of looking at it, and it's something that I think we all kind of know that, right? I think if we're being honest and reflective about it, I think we know that. But I also feel like so many of us, we're armchair, bookers, right? And we're sitting at home like, oh, I would have done this or I would have done that, and and it's easy to say that when, number one, it's not your money, and number two, what you say is kind of you're speaking into the void. But we see it. We see attendance at a lot of these wrestling shows have been going down. At one point there was wrestling happening on a Tuesday night. I'm living in Southern California. At the Grand Olympic Auditorium, you would have matches every Tuesday and Thursday at the Olympic Auditorium, and they would have 5,000, 10,000 people show up to these things. And I don't think that outside of the WWE and sometimes AEW, that you don't really get that kind of a draw for most wrestling shows these days. And I don't think you get anything close to that. And a lot of that has to do with that the product has been watered down, and so many people have, at least in my opinion, have not done that old school approach. And we say old school, but I think it was just an approach that worked.
Yeah. And in the past, I guess you could, like my reflex is, well, it's easier if you have TV. But
Sure.
these days you have YouTube, you have streaming, everybody has TV.
Yeah.
Everybody does. So yeah, because obviously back when you had your territories, the territory promotions had the television had all the television, and if you were an outlaw promotion, you didn't have much of a chance because people couldn't see your product.
Right.
In advance. There was no internet, there was no YouTube, that none of it existed. So that's why promoters protected their TV deals and sometimes they were losing deals, like they lost money on just the TV part of things, so that they would have a way to promote their show and make all their money in the arena.
Right.
Ted Turner, early on, when he was developing his empire, he saw television as simply a moving billboard. His family's history was the billboard business down in the Southeast. It
Okay.
was the number one billboard company. If you wanted your product on a billboard, you went to the Turner people, and that's how he saw his early cable station. It's just as a moving billboard. and that's why he liked wrestling so much, because wrestling, number one, was cheap entertainment, and it drew numbers. It drew people, and the wrestling people loved it because it brought folks to see live events, and that's where they made all their money.
As a kid growing up here in Southern California, we had WWF programming. Uh, I unfortunately was not old enough to go to the Grand Olympic Auditorium that kind of shut down operations before I was of age to go to wrestling shows. But we'd get WWF programming, and of course, in the '80s, we had Glow Wrestling on the syndication networks. And in about 1987, we were the one of the first families in my neighborhood to get cable TV, and that's when we were introduced to TBS, and that's when all of a sudden my whole world opened up with Jim Crockett Promotions and later WCW with Ted Turner. And it was such a radically different program from what I was watching on our channel 11, the WWF programming. And it's such a fun time to be a fan, because shortly after that, then I would find the AWA was on ESPN, and later we'd find once AWA had closed shop, eventually we got Global Wrestling Federation, and it was such a fun time being a fan of wrestling, because you had all these really good companies who were competing for the same thing. Everyone was looking for eyeballs. Everyone wanted to get that exposure, and you were a part of that time and space for pro wrestling. And I have to ask you, like, what was that like for you? As again, you started off with the WWF and then made your way to the AWA. Tell me about the process from going from basically one territory to the next.
It goes back to what we were talking about before, and that is, I think, one essential attribute was my authenticity. I lived up in the northeastern part of the country, and Vinny was going to other territories. He was stealing wrestlers. He was taking over TVs of the territory, guys, and then Gagne and Jim Crockett. So this is numbers 2 and 3 in the country teamed up. They formed Pro Wrestling USA. They combined their talent. They even had their own TV show together.
Yeah.
And they came up into the Northeast to whichever arenas would allow them in, because McMahon did what he could to keep them out of the major arenas. Like, they would never be able to get in Madison Square Garden,
Right.
for instance. But there were a few arenas. There were some arenas where where they were able to get in. And one was the Meadowlands. And at the time, I had been mostly all WWE for 11 years. I announced for 8 of those years. I did their weekly television show. But I could see that by the time 1984, 85 came, this was not going to last with me.
Yeah.
And Vern Gagne came by, and I started to announce also for Pro Wrestling USA. And I couldn't understand why WWE allowed that. Maybe they didn't even know about it. I doubt that, but I don't know.
Yeah.
So both promotions were coming to the Meadowlands once a month. And I would go in and announce for WWE, like I always would. This is the best wrestling in the world. 2 weeks later, I'd come back for an AWA NWA show, the Pro Wrestling USA. This is the greatest wrestling in the world. And I thought to myself, after doing this 2 or 3 months, I thought, if there's one thing that I have that I'll take with me, it's believability. And people believe me.
Yeah.
So I need to make a choice. And I saw the writing on the wall with WWF, and Vern Gagne was starting his ESPN show. It be the first, for most of the first year, it came from the Tropicana Hotel in Atlantic City. And that was a big deal because it was a national pro wrestling show. What I was doing was the territory.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't fired from the WWE, and I didn't necessarily quit. I just stopped. They stopped booking me. I stopped going, and I began with Vern Gagne. But I think I hold the distinction of being the only person ever to work for the WWE, the AWA, and the NWA all at the same time.
Wow.
I
It's
don't think
that.
anyone else ever did that.
No, and I don't, and yeah, that's, I didn't think about that, but yeah, absolutely. That's a very unique distinction that I think maybe only you can say that you did that
So
simultaneously. Yeah.
that's how the transition happened. Just to maintain some form of authenticity. It all wouldn't have, in the long run, it all wouldn't have lasted anyway.
Right.
And Pro Wrestling USA broke apart. It didn't last. But it introduced me to the AWA promoters. It introduced me to the NWA owners, the Crockett's. So they started using me in Baltimore every month, and then Philly after a while, and New Haven, and so that was my transition to WCW. So I was working for everybody, and then I was doing some independent shows too. Now we're talking the late '80s.
I have a few more things I would like to ask you about, but I would be remiss if I didn't include our audience who's watching right now, because I did have a few questions, and I would like to share a few of those with you if that would be okay. First off, Archive Books Collective Chronicles says that Mr. Cappetta is the gold standard for ring announcing in the same way that Gordon Solie was the gold standard for calling a match.
That's very kind. Thank you. Gordon is a hero of mine. He was a very good friend when we both worked in WCW. Thank you very much. It's nice of you to say.
One of my dear friends in the business is David Marquez, who he's the wrestling promoter out here on the West Coast with Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. And they actually just started recently in New York. They have a show tomorrow, Gotham. And he liked to think of himself as a protege of Gordon Solie. And he patterned a lot of his mannerisms while being a backstage interviewer off of Mr. Solie. So I mean, high praise. I think the world of Gordon Solie too. So I think that's very nicely said. Archives.
Whenever Gordon's name comes up, I always like to throw in. I mean, he was so revered in Florida, that they renamed the state. They renamed the street that he lived on. I think it was Gordon Solie. I think it was Way, Gordon Solie Way.
Wow.
Thought it was pretty cool. When I used to go visit sometimes, and this was before GPS, and you just ask where Gordon Solie lives, and it's Gordon Solie Way.
There you go. Jammin' Music Man says he loved hearing Garry as a ring announcer during the WCW days.
This guy's a music guy?
Yeah, Jammin' Music.
I love live music. Oh, I love live music. In the last week, I've been to 2 concerts. Like, they're old school things.
Sure. Who'd you go see?
Thursday night in Daytona Beach, I went to see the Four Tops and the Temptations.
Oh, nice.
And, oh man, a week ago Friday, I went to see, do you know who Mr. Las Vegas is?
No, but enlighten me, please.
Wayne Newton.
Oh, of course, Wayne Newton. Yes.
82-year-old Wayne Newton.
How did he sound?
So good. It was so over the top Las Vegas lounge schlocky. Everybody has a wireless mic, right?
Yeah.
In this day, no, not Wayne. Wayne has a wired mic so that when he finishes his song, he can throw the mic in the air and tug it back and catch it on its rebound.
And at 82, he could still do all this. That's great.
Oh, yeah. He played like 3 or 4 different instruments.
Wow.
He didn't sing a lot of songs, but he interacted with video on the giant screen behind him.
Yeah.
I mean, he sang a duet with Sammy Davis Jr.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it doesn't get better than that. I love live music.
it's funny. I think maybe my three passions in life. I love going to pro wrestling events. I'm a big baseball fan, so I love going to baseball events. But live music, it's such a thrilling experience, and it doesn't really matter. Like I prefer a lot of the alternative music that I grew up with in the '90s, but I will go to see anybody. And my wife used to be a big country music fan, so like we saw Garth Brooks, and that's not my cup of tea at all. But he was such a phenomenal live performer. I was blown away at how great he was. And
You know,
this was just a few years ago, but he sounded just as good as he did in the '90s.
Garth Brooks. Garth Brooks is a really good example, a parallel to the evolution of wrestling. Garth, I remember seeing video. I never went to see Garth Brooks live, but if I'm not mistaken, I remember seeing video of Garth Brooks. Didn't he swing over the audience?
Not the one that I saw, but I wouldn't be surprised if he did. He climbed up it almost looked like a jungle gym, like at a kids park, and it had like lights on it, and he climbed up on it and was just part of the show. And I was like, he's not a young man, but he's moving like better than I could out there, and he looked great.
Now, here's my point. My point is you have these old, crusty old people like me who say, "Oh man, it was great back then. It was one. What are they doing to our business?" That's a bunch of baloney. Okay.
Yeah.
Imagine the old school country singers and the fiddlers, and they look at Garth Brooks swinging over the audience, playing on a lighted jungle gym. They would say the same thing.
For
Like,
sure. Yeah.
that's not country music.
Yeah.
They're ruining our business. People just need to lighten up and to accept change. But I would say with wrestling, within certain bounds, there still need to be certain things that are maintained, or it's not pro wrestling anymore. But within those loose bounds, go for it, create, evolve.
It's okay. So you bring that up, and that draws a strong parallel to, I feel like at the time ECW was considered very chaotic, but also kind of like a trendsetter, and a lot of the things that they were doing in ECW we'd see later, and the WWE would incorporate, WCW would incorporate, and a lot of people even think today like AEW is kind of like the spiritual successor to what ECW was back in the day. And ECW was so radically different from what they were doing in the WWE at the time, because to your point earlier, like the referees kind of lost a lot of the authority during ECW. The matches were a lot more chaotic. The moves, there was a lot more the idea of a no holds barred was kind of the standard for ECW. Do you feel like they were treading that line, or do you feel like they jumped over that line of creating a different version of pro wrestling?
Paul did what he did in order to stand apart.
Okay.
I just wish he had chosen a different way to do that. I don't think that I just don't think it because of how expectations now have changed.
Yeah.
I really have concern for like the health of wrestlers who do. Can you top that kind of
Right.
moves?
Right.
I don't know, and maybe this is just being stuck in the past. But every time a wrestler, a wrestler knows that one way to get a rise out of the crowd is to pull a table from under the ring. It's like, ugh, here we go again.
And I'll
It's not my cup of tea.
And I'm with you on that one. I recently went to a Game Changer Wrestling. They came out here to Los Angeles, and I went because there was a lot of very talented wrestlers that I enjoyed, that I wanted to see. But the minute the death match stuff happens, I'm like, I'm ready to go home now. I saw everything that I needed to see. I don't want to watch what I call garbage wrestling. I'm not into that. I'd like to see the high flying wrestling. I like to see mat technicians. I'm even good with the striking matches. But once I see a light tube come out, I check out. I'm absolutely done with it.
And people can point to the past and point to crazy kinds of spectacles, in the 60s and the 70s. But that happened once a year in a promotion, maybe. It didn't become an ordinary part of the program. And that's the difference.
It typically was the punctuation point on a feud or a storyline that had been building up for it, as opposed to like a one-on-one match for the first time. Let's throw a light tube match or whatever. And I never enjoyed that, and I've always thought that was not the right way to do it. But that, again, that's me.
They always have to ask the question why. Like, why are we doing what we're doing? What you can't get away from the basic understanding that and this sounds really stupid to put into words. The purpose of a wrestling match is to win. Period.
Yeah.
And if what you're doing doesn't contribute to you winning, it doesn't belong. It just doesn't belong.
I agree with that. Let me get 3 more comments from here, and then I'm going to ask you a little bit about your book too, because I don't want to neglect that. But Jammin' Music Man said, Gary, what was it like to announce to the audience that Ric Flair was no longer a part of WCW at that house show in 1991?
I know exactly what he's talking about.
Yeah.
He saw that viral video probably on YouTube. The thing that I like best about that clip is, it was filmed by a fan, and to hear the fan's reaction to what I'm saying in the ring was really cool. All that I remember now, here's an example of what I was talking about before.
Yeah.
When you said, what makes the difference between a good announcer and a great announcer? How you handled that announcement was very important. And these instances don't come along every week, but when they come along, you need to know how to handle it. And whenever I was giving an announcement that was bad news to the fans, you never would go in and use your booming. You have to identify with them. You have to come across like, I know this is bad news. It sucks. I agree. And then you need to let them vent for some seconds.
For sure.
So, ladies and gentlemen, Ric Flair will not be here, whatever. And then you shake your head, like it's horrible. It's just horrible.
Yeah.
And then you tell them what they're going to see instead, once they've digested that. What I do, so that's a general rule of making that kind of an announcement. The only thing that I do remember was backstage. There was a public relations guy from WCW. He had this statement that they just expected that I was going to go out in the ring and read it. So, and it was on the fly. So I scanned it, and I'm saying, I'm not reading this. So, I didn't say that, but I'm thinking to myself, sure. I'm like, this will fall flatter than an unleavened pancake. So I just said to him, okay, I said, I'm not going to read this, but I will give them all of this information, but I'll put it in my voice. And that's what I did. That's what I remember about that night.
Two more. One from Archive Books Chronicles, and he says, as an Italian American, what did Bruno Sammartino mean to Mr. Cappetta?
He meant everything to me. He was the reason that I watched wrestling. When I would watch his interviews, his promos, and he would look at me in his broken English, and he would say, I need you to come down to the arena and support me tonight. or next week. I'm a little kid and I'm sitting there and I'm saying, my God, if I don't go down, Bruno might lose his title. Hey, Mom, I need to go down to the wrestling shows. And then I became friends with Bruno years later. Who would know?
Yeah.
And he was my hero, and he lived up to every part of what I appreciated about him. Never let me down. There was a span of time when I had started with WCW and I hadn't spoken to him. And then by chance, he and I were on the phone together, and he remembered things about me personally. He remembered things about my family. He said something to me like, "Are they treating you okay?" I said, "Yeah, Bruno, everything's." In other words, are they using you? Are they
Right.
respecting you? And don't let anyone disrespect you. Yeah, Bruno, he meant everything.
I've only obviously I never spoke to Bruno Sammartino, but I've only heard that same sentiment that he was a really good guy, and that his word was bond. And if you had a conversation with him, that he was somebody that would remember that conversation. And I find that remarkable, considering all the people he must have met throughout his time, not just in wrestling but in life, and being able to remember you. And I don't mean this in a negative way, but to remember you and to ask about the family and stuff. I think
Yes,
that's so
yes. I would
incredible.
walk away from a conversation saying to myself, "Did he really remember like what my dad does for a living?"
Yeah, that's great, and that's good to hear, because in this, like, in this sport, in pro wrestling, there are good guys, but there's a lot of guys who aren't good, and there's a lot of people who don't live up to the character that they portray on television. So it's good to hear that there are good guys, and there have been good guys out there.
Most
I'm
of the guys that I've come in contact with are good guys. It's very few that I would say are dirtbags. Very few.
I'm glad that you've had those
And I'm not
experiences.
going there, so don't ask.
No, no, I would never, sir. I would never ask you for
Because
that.
it's not necessary. It's just
Yeah, I'm very much a positive person, and I'd rather spend more time talking about the positive elements of pro wrestling. We could all scream into the void about what's negative about pro wrestling, but I don't feel like we're doing a disservice to the industry if we talk about all of the negative. I feel like focusing on the positive and giving people an opportunity to come up with their own conclusions of wrestling. I feel like to me, that's where I feel like I'm best suited to be in this position of, talking to you,
yeah.
talking to wrestling fans. Spreading negativity isn't going to help anybody in the sport of wrestling, but spreading positivity could help encourage more people to check it out and view, the newer wrestling companies and all that stuff too.
That's why I have to caution myself, because I don't want people to walk away. I mean, I have strong opinions about certain
Sure.
things, and it doesn't sour me on pro wrestling. And I'm not trying to sour anyone on pro wrestling. I'm trying to preserve the majesty of the art form.
I love it. I'm so happy to hear you say that. One last comment from the peanut gallery, and then we'll ask you a few more questions if we can. Uh, my good friend Rick Del Santo says, "Hey to Jay and to the world's most dangerous ring announcer." I did read that nickname was coined by James Cornette for you, but what was the story behind it? Because I'm unaware of that, and it is a great nickname, but where did it come from?
It originally came from Dick the Bruiser,
Oh, okay.
who out of Indianapolis was the world's most dangerous wrestler. And growing up, David Letterman was a wrestling fan, and he liked Dick the Bruiser and he liked Bobby Heenan. So when he started his TV show, he had Paul Schaefer, and they named the band the world's most dangerous band. And I think part of the reason is because Paul Schaefer, like myself, were kind of like unassuming kind of guys.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, they think it's funny that, that someone who is not dangerous in any way is called the world's most dangerous. And I think that's where Cornette, he was on commentary at the, when he said this. And I think that's where he was coming from. That was the joke, the world's most dangerous announcer, because I'm just the opposite of that. So it was funny, and it stuck.
That's a great story. Okay, I asked you for an hour, and you've been very gracious in giving me an hour. I'm gonna ask for just a little bit more time if you could squeeze it in, because we haven't talked about body slams yet, and I definitely want to give you an opportunity. Now, the book was released, I believe, in January, correct?
But 26 years ago,
Oh, this book
Jan-
came out 26 years ago.
January of 2000.
Oh, I must have looked at something very incorrectly, because I was on Amazon today and I got ready to hit that purchase button. And I got a little bit busy, and it said that it was released January like 26, but maybe I misread
Oh
it.
no! Oh no! 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 This one that you're seeing here with me is my self-published edition,
Okay.
which came out in 2000.
Okay.
In 2006, not 26,
Okay.
2006, because this did so well, ECW Publishing came to me and they wanted to put it out.
Okay.
And it has a different cover. And I said to them, okay, but I don't want to just put the same book out. Another 5 years have passed. I want to add to it. And there weren't many, but there were a few people who had an issue with what I said in my original Body Slams book.
Yeah.
I want to go to them and I want to give them an opportunity to respond to what I wrote in the beginning, the early part of the book.
Right.
And I told them, and you'll have the last word. I will, whatever you say, it'll go, whatever you give me, it'll go in there and I will not comment on it. And that's also part of but it's 2006, not 26.
My apologies. That's on me. Gosh, I thought it said 2026. I said, oh, this is a new book. Okay, cool.
But yet it continues to be, selling well, and people continue to review it. And, I'm blessed. I'm very fortunate.
Well, I plan to do a podcast version of a book report on it once I get it and get a chance to dive into it, because it certainly, just even talking to you this evening has been a very interesting look at pro wrestling, and from a perspective that I haven't seen before. So it makes me even more excited to get the book, and I certainly encourage all of the viewers right now and those who listen to the podcast later that should definitely check that out. And we will put a link to you can buy it on Amazon. It makes it very easy, and we'll put a link to the Amazon the Amazon URL on the podcast.
Now we need to talk about Geek Fest.
Absolutely.
And Dog Pro Wrestling. I'm going to be making an appearance this coming Saturday at the Gloucester County Fairgrounds in Mullica Hill, New Jersey, where there's going to be live pro wrestling as part of a larger event, which is called Geek Fest.
Right.
And I was invited to come and say hi to the fans. And it's great pro wrestling. It's great independent wrestling. And I want, if you're in South Jersey, Philadelphia area, Delaware, I want you to come on out. It's this coming Saturday, April 4th. The wrestling starts at 11 a.m. and it goes through the day, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be there about noon, just, to say hi to people. And if you have a Body Slams book, I'll be happy to sign it. If you don't have a Body Slams book, I'll have a few copies with me that that you can pick up. But he's the guy that arranged our interview, right?
Yeah.
So we have to give Lawrence his due.
Yeah.
This Saturday, April 4th, Mullica Hill, New Jersey, the Gloucester County Fairgrounds. Wrestling begins at 11 a.m. It's Dog, DAWG, Dog Wrestling. So please come on out and give us a bark.
I love it. Give us a bark. I actually, so believe it or not, like I said, I'm on the West Coast, but I have been to one of the Dangerous Adrenaline Wrestling Gladiator events down in Glassboro back in 2023. And I had such a great time. And fortunately, I've been able to watch a lot of their content via YouTube. And if you guys haven't done so already, go subscribe to Dog Pro Wrestling YouTube channel. You could see all the matches there. And I have a sneaking suspicion that a lot of these matches might end up on their channel as well. But I think the real cool thing about this event is you are going to be there. And I don't know this for certain, but do you do a lot of autograph signings, or is this kind of a rare opportunity for fans to see?
Not too many.
Yeah.
Once, a few a year, but not many.
Well, I think
I don't put myself out there to, no, I usually, I just like to low key it. My visibility more or less is online now.
Yeah.
I've got a new Facebook subscribers page, in which now for my Body Slams book, in all of the years that it's been out, there's never been an audio version.
Oh.
So one of the things that I'm offering to the people that subscribe to my Facebook subscribers side of things is the audio version of Body Slams. I'm in the process of recording it. And as I finish a chapter, I'll post it, and I'll finish another chapter and I'll post it. And you'll get content that's not on the free side of these. You'll get my rants about things that I would like to see improved. I've got one coming up on tag team wrestling. These are things that are not visible to the general public. You have to be a subscriber. The night Andre the Giant fell asleep in the ring during a match, like stories that no one would ever think of asking me about that. But, so I have a lot of opinions, and then some historical stuff, some footage. I had footage from 1931 of old school wrestling. Back then there were events with like 50,000 people, 40,000 people.
Yeah.
The WrestleManias aren't the first ones to attract that kind of crowd. But the most important thing this week, this night, by the way, all those people that ask questions, thank you very much. I appreciate you joining in and that you had, interest. But this week, it's Dog Pro Wrestling, April 4th. That's Saturday, 11 a.m., Gloucester County Fairgrounds, Mullica Hill, New Jersey. GMC will be there. I'm driving up from Florida for the Easter holiday.
Okay.
So I plan on getting there by noon, and that's my plan. So join me there.
That's and again, you're living up to the book title, the Pitchman of Wrestling here. You just did a great job of selling this event, and of course, anyone who is within driving distance, heck, if you're even within flying distance, you should make this an absolute adventure for yourself to go to the South Philly Geek Fest. And again, please go say hello to the Dangerous Journal and Wrestling Gladiators, but say hello to Garry Michael Cappetta and get yourself a book, because absolutely, why not take advantage of an opportunity to meet, for me, one of the voices of my childhood. So I want to say thank you for, first of all, everything that you did in the sport of professional wrestling, because all points led us to this moment right here. And thank you for taking the time to speak with me this evening. And I really do appreciate it. And please drive carefully when you get up there. And I hope you have a heck of an event on Saturday.
I appreciate it. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. So Garry Michael Cappetta, the social medias are on the bottom of the video description. And I'll also add later a link to that Facebook page that you guys could subscribe to his Facebook membership page, because I think that's actually sounds like a lot of fun too. A lot of great, interesting stories that you're not going to hear here, but you can definitely hear them there. And thank you again for your time.
You're welcome.
Have a good evening. All right, guys, make sure you visit the South Philly Geek Fest this Saturday. And until next time, we'll see you at the matches. Thanks for joining the stream. This has been a presentation of Alliance-Wrestling.com. We genuinely appreciate your support. Would you consider subscribing so you'll never miss a future episode? I'd also like to remind you we do a live stream every Tuesday at 5 p.m. before NWA Power. You can find us on social media at The Alliance Blog. And until next time, we are The Alliance.